Hello and welcome to our wonderful leadership development webinar. It's myself, TK, and Arif, the co-founders and hosts from Humble Associates.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Excited to be back again. It's been a while, TK.
Indeed, yes. We've decided, based on your feedback, that it's easier for you to follow us if we do these monthly. So there's more announcements that we'll have at the end, but with podcasts, with audiograms, with live shows, that might be an interesting one. And as always, this show is all about leadership development for you. So let us know where you're coming from. I'm here in my Sky office. Arif is in his bedroom office.
Thanks,
But you're
TK.
not supposed to know. But hey, that's what we do these things for. But the thing is, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. And we'll get right onto it because today there's something interesting we want to talk about. So what is it, Arif?
The missing piece to leadership development. We'll
Missing
find out
piece.
what that
Sounds
is.
mysterious, doesn't it?
Very mysterious. Yeah. Excited as always.
It is mysterious. And we'll talk about what is it that you might be neglecting or not looking into when it comes to your leadership development program. But before we do so, and we can see many familiar faces from all around the world, we would like to get to know you, which we will on this particular slide. So we would love you if you could get to the comments and let us know who you are. So there's actually 4 choices and there's some more. So Arif, what are the choices?
Well, as it is on the screen, if you're an L&D or HR professional, please hit A on your keyboard. If you're a leader, B. If you're an agile person, C. And if you're neither of the above, then D is your friend. Or you can do a combination, whichever
You can
combination.
do a combination, yes, because we do play many roles in our lives and at work. So, if you're an agile person, also you can give us a wave. But when you put these letters in, press return, so send it to us as a comment. So we will all be able to get to know each other. And I can see a couple of, and Shade, as always, great to see you and great to see everyone else commenting. Thank you for coming in such large numbers. So let's move on and talk about, leadership. So that's an interesting one. We have to first define what is leadership, right? We've never spoken about it much before, haven't we, Arif?
No, we haven't. Only every other webinar we're on doing
Only
it.
every other webinar. But it's very important to understand how we understand leadership because many people understand it in different ways. I think, Arif, on our last podcast, on one of our last episodes, we talked about like self-organization, self-management, stuff
Yes.
like that. So,
Yeah, we did.
if you're talking about leadership, what would you say is the best definition of leadership for you?
Me personally, I think it's about. The other side of it. We talked. You mentioned the self-management side of it. We use a lot of. Actually, no, I won't talk about that because that will kind of give it away. So I'm going to stop.
Spoiler
not talking about
podcast.
that.
Come and listen. Leading with agility.
It's going to be. It's going to be another. It's going to be one of the things we'll talk about on
Yes.
today's webinar. But sorry, to answer your question, for me, it's all about the team aspect, and it's all about creating an environment that enables high performance to occur within the teams you're leading, the people you're managing, in order so that people feel like they're able to get the best. You're able to get the best out of everyone, whatever the type of work is you're working on.
Absolutely. For me, and I think, it's an interesting aspect to look at leadership from the perspective of a team, maybe a wider organization. Like the way I look at it, Arif, is like a leader is a person that can act by taking responsibility for the world around them. Now,
Yeah.
not the entire world, although there are some leaders that certainly try to, maybe not for the best, but actually taking charge and taking responsibility. So it's more
That's right.
a mindset than a skill. More a mindset than a set of tools, right? And that's something important that we want you to consider today. So
Amazing.
the next thing we have is we want to talk about what do we mean by leadership development. So we do leadership development as a mission of our company, and we do it with agility. So when it comes to leadership development, it obviously has to do something with this leadership thing. So how would you characterize this, Arif? What's
Well,
leadership development?
interesting because I was doing a
Yes.
bit of reading before
As you
we came on air, right? And some much more experienced people than me, professors and so on, professors and other experienced people, they talk about leadership development in three kind of areas or three kind of
Do tell.
segments. There's kind of what they call learning on the job. There's the kind of formal training, and there's also this idea of your own kind of reflective practices of how you get feedback from others around you, how you increase your own self-awareness via interactions with others. So there's three kind of segments that make up leadership development.
That's a very good point, Arif, and I think it's interesting, this reflective aspect of leadership development and actually learning on the job. All three are quite valid, right, when it comes to leadership development. But interestingly, even though, as you said, in theory, this is what you're supposed to have. You're supposed to probably have these aspects connected together. What we usually see is leadership development looking, well, somewhat underwhelming, right? So I've been to a few leadership development program myself, and I know that you have been too. And somehow what turns out, and we also talk with, other people in the similar field, aka our competition, and there's a lot of e-learning, as in, you get some course that you do online by looking at some videos. There's sometimes AI being involved. There's lots of training people are getting to get the basic management skills. And there's also sometimes, as we spoke last time, some away days, etc. But usually that's that, right? It seems like the leadership programs are more like a bit of a school rather than this experiential learning.
Yeah, I mean, those three kind of categories I mentioned, what these very experienced people say is that typically is what the majority of leadership development programs look like, right? They have those kind of components, and there is a skew, and unfortunately, there's a heavy amount on the formal training.
Yeah,
and that's what I think you're getting at a little bit, isn't it? Which is where we have perhaps an over-reliance on the training elements, but maybe not enough of a skew in terms of the other capabilities that make up leadership development.
It's a very good point, Arif, and I'm wondering from your point of view, why do you think it's the case? What brought it this way, right? There's supposed to be a balance, but somehow it just got skewed to training.
That's a good question. I haven't looked into that answer. I haven't got the answer for that. I mean, there's probably some assumptions we can make around why organizations typically will look outside, look externally for sources of inspiration, knowledge, right?
They would.
And by doing that, there's an inbuilt assumption there that it's others who can teach them and know more, and through that they'll be looking at formal teaching, training, etc. So I guess there's part, and then obviously there are organizations who want to capitalize on that and provide that kind of service as well. So it's probably a mix of both. But
there's a market, there's a supply, right?
That's right.
People doing that, and I don't think we should complain about it, because this kind of training is important. But also, as you said, there is sometimes what we've seen is the inspiration session, right? So you've got a bunch of leaders in a single place, and some well-known, world-renowned person comes in and pushes inspiration for them. Maybe a sports person, a military commander, a religious person. So, these kinds of people with their inspiration are bringing something into the organization. But it's very interesting, Arif, what you've mentioned. It's like learning on the job and the reflective learning, because I'm just wondering. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm going to build on what you were going to say, I think. So
yes, because I'm just wondering what happens if the only thing you get is training, right? What happens? It's all well and good when you have the training, but what happens after? What are the consequences of this approach?
Well, this is the thing. If we're only doing that and we're neglecting the other elements, I think there is a well-known, I think most people joining us today probably appreciate that the level of learning is going to be limited, and what you're able to then implement and actually change is not going to be as impactful. because some of that, what we talked about there around that reflective practice, the idea of learning through experience, hands-on experimentation, whatever it might be, trying different things, learning different things, that is where probably the majority of the learning occurs. And if we are too much skewed to just the formal training, where do we actually test these ideas out? Where do we actually, in a safe way, do something different and see what the results are?
And that's quite key, right? Do something different. And you're quite right there, Arif, in terms of what happens when, you just learn by being trained. And by the way, I love reviewers. There's lots of you. Let us know what are your experiences with such leadership development programs. We'd love to interact with you. It's a live session. We're not recorded. I mean, we're recording ourselves, but we're speaking live. And the interesting thing happens when you don't have the opportunity to practice your leadership techniques. It all goes into a cupboard at one point, right? I think I've told this story at one point, possibly on our podcast, when I was trained in leadership. I was actually trained in leadership and situational leadership too. Ken Blanchard, a lovely company, came in and helped me understand all of that. And it took me 10 years, I was trained quite early, to fully embrace it and understand it. For me, it was like, oh, this is something, right? This wonderful person is giving me this knowledge. It sounds cool. But the moment I left the wonderful training venue, it was obviously also an away day, I forgot about it until I had to move house and I dug out the old slides. I said, oh, that's where it is. So it's an interesting one, right? How you start forgetting this the moment you actually move out. So anything to add there, Arif?
No, I was just going back to, some of the things we said earlier. One of the things I was looking at, and this comes from some work by a professor at the London Business School, and a case study that he and some others ran at HSBC. And they looked at alternative models for leadership development. And part of it for them, and they tested this out, included the idea of what they call self-discovery. Wow. So this is the idea of figuring out your own identity in the workplace, right? And their whole kind of part of their research and what they've been looking at is thinking about, well, okay, how do leaders develop beyond this well-known theory that 70% of learning happens on the job experience and 20% happens through other interactions, feedback, etc. So by looking at all of that, they arrived at a couple of ideas, and one of them is this idea of self-discovery, where you are able to focus on the interactions in the workplace. You're able to reflect on what you've done with a colleague, try something different out, etc. And I think this is where maybe we'll lead to our conversation today about this missing piece a bit. So
indeed we will, right? Because what we want to talk about is the actual missing piece. Yeah. And lo and behold, we believe that for many leadership programs, and as you've alluded to, Arif, the reflective piece is the one that's missing. And we believe that you can actually fulfill it. And a very important tool for that is coaching. Right? And we've seen some people actually mentioning that in the comments. So thank you. I think, Gina, you've mentioned that. And I think, it is an important component. For us, it's the key component. Because what happens is, if you overvalue training and not provide opportunities for leaders to self-discover through coaching, so supported self-discovery, the challenge is, that might be something that will not work for you. There's some humor going on in the comments. I've been trained mainly on them becoming my boss. Well, that's an interesting one. Okay, well, and some interesting comments. Thank you for the discussion. Do continue, and we always love to look at it and interact. So if there's anything picking up, we'll definitely pick it up. And by the way, if you have any questions, it's a good idea to ask them. So we'll make sure we answer them by the end of this presentation. So yes, so coaching. So what types of leadership coaching, Arif, do you actually know, and what are the ones that we're practicing?
Well, I mean, I think there are two kind of areas that we look at ourselves at Humble, isn't it? One of them, I'm guessing we're going to start off with is the leadership circle model, right? And this is, for us, a critical kind of tool that allows leaders to really self-reflect on their leadership style, their behaviors, and what type of leadership stances do they predominantly operate in the workplace. But also, and I just had a session this morning with a client of ours doing a briefing with their own assessment that they ran. They did a self-assessment. And it was really, for this person, really, I suppose, illuminating is the word, for him to be able to see how the working environment that he's in, the team that he's working in, is impacting his leadership style. So this kind of tool is great for that self-awareness piece and that self-discovery piece, and it's a great starting point or launch pad for where you want to develop as a leader. Where do you want to go? I think that this, there's a lot to be said about leadership circle. Maybe we need to go back and do another session on that or something at a later point. But yeah, that's a great starting point. I think the other model that we use a lot, and this is where we are looking at group settings predominantly, is the idea of organization relationship systemic coaching, right, or ORSC, which is also a model that exists out there. TK, you're probably better versed on this model than I am, so I don't know if you want to add some of your.
Oh no, I most certainly will, right?
thoughts.
But there is possibly an interesting dynamic here between the two types of coaching we've discussed, right? So individual and group setting, right? And I'll cover ORSC a bit more, but what I find really interesting is the fact how these two types interact, right? Because, for instance, in our leadership program, we offer both. We find value in both the individual coaching and guidance for a given leader, but also helping a group develop. So I'm wondering, Arif, what do you see as pros for both? Why do you think a leadership program should include both?
I think from the individual point of view, as a starting point, we mentioned this idea of self-discovery, and as I mentioned, these very smart people have been researching this and looking into it. If you are, or you've been invited or you've been selected to be part of a leadership development program, self-discovery is really crucial as a means to better know yourself and give you space to be able to develop outside of a classroom environment, right? And through a one-to-one coaching setting where you can use a tool like I mentioned, you'll really get an accelerated view of your own style quickly, but also through that coaching, hopefully give you the confidence to go away and adjust behavior, try different things, come back, reflect on it in a coaching environment, and iterate and evolve your own behaviors and practices. On the flip side, with that group setting, if you're in a group leadership environment, you may also benefit from thoroughly revitalizing, improving, or evolving your group leadership behaviors. What we see with that, what we do come across, quite often, are leadership teams where we've got, grey areas between roles, responsibilities, or communication patterns that aren't the best or most effective. And in those kind of situations, that ORSC pattern allows you to then have the tough conversations without blaming, without talking about individuals, but focusing on what's missing, what are the behavior patterns that need to be worked on, taking that collective responsibility, and so on.
It's a good point, Arif. And I think when it comes to group coaching using ORSC, the important thing here, and as I promised, I'll delve a bit into it, is every team, every group of people has what's called a third entity, right? So instead of treating, what many group coaching techniques do, is they treat each client individually. What ORSC does, it tries to see the group as a third entity that needs to be coached. And I think in many cases, what we hear is leadership teams. But what we actually get is leadership groups of people And we all probably know about boardroom dynamics, and we work with a lot of senior executives and senior executive teams, and we know how, unfortunately, it becomes a pressure cooker, how difficult these relationships can become. So the organizational relationship systems coaching is the approach that lets us treat leadership teams as proper systems, as to help them to develop in such a way that they can be an interactive, adaptive system that can definitely lead people through challenging times that we all suffer from, right? There's always the need for agile leaders. And, as we know, and as we propagate agile leadership as a method, agile leader reflects, agile leader chases value, agile leader embraces the nature of testing and learning, and also understands their impact on their environment. I think this is quite important. But the main question is, Arif, right? Because we're offering that and we have a lot of success. What is it that companies find difficult when it comes to this? Why do you think there's not enough coaching in leadership development programs?
I think simply because it's an investment and it's a cost and time investment. And I understand that. I appreciate it. And I think we are in tough times. We know that. Economically, we appreciate that. So that there is that cost time investment. It is consuming for organizations to be able to allow their participants on a training course to dedicate an hour, 2 hours, whatever it is, every couple of weeks, a month, whatever, on a regular cadence to meet with a coach, reflect with them, share in a safe environment what their challenges are, what experiences they've been having, what they've tried differently, what is working, what isn't working, all of that good stuff, right? So to do that on top of then some training of some kind, it's not straightforward. But the question is, and I think you'd agree, TK, is what is the cost of not doing that in terms of what kind of leadership team or group of leaders or cohort of leaders are you looking to build in your organization, and what is what's the impact of not investing in the right way in their development and their future?
That's a good point, and I think we've got Gina actually saying that it needs actual commitment, right? And it's just important for leaders to see. There's two things that I think is important here. One, for the organization, and you wonderful L&D leaders, which a lot of you gave us the letter, need to see that your offering for your leaders is one of your core L&D offering. So that's as important as training everyone else. I think we shouldn't shy away from investing in leaders and their skill, because it obviously has a direct relationship to the organization's performance and culture. And I'm sure in many organizations, people complain about their leadership culture. And if you don't do anything about it by helping your leaders grow, this is what you'll get. And also, on top of that, for you that are, I think, now a letter A, so you that have put leadership in your letter, it's you finding the time to do that, right? So even if the other viewers of this webinar, the L&D people, the leadership development people in organizations decide to invest and invite you in, treat it seriously, because it's something that without it, you will really struggle to find new ideas how to lead better. And I'm sure you want to be the leader that your organization deserves, don't you?
I think just to add on that, TK, when we do run our own work and programs, I think those leaders who do spend time away from the classroom, as you said, with a coach or whoever, with someone independent to then, work on the learnings that they've been receiving, they get the most value out of the experience, generally speaking, most often than not.
That is quite
I
true,
think, And I think the other side of it is that, hybrid work, flexible work, that type of environment that we're in now is even more accessible, this type of missing piece of coaching. It's not that you need, maybe, there may be circumstances depending on the type of work you're doing where you prefer to have in person, in house, someone coming in, fine. That's also always there. But now with the flexible working, hybrid working, it's even more accessible to get leadership coaching delivered remotely at a time and place that's convenient for participants of your program.
Especially for global teams, and especially for people that are always busy. We had one leader that said, "Yeah, I know who you are, and but I'm booked up for the next 3 months. I literally have no time to talk." So that can happen. I'm sure this story is familiar to you, and this reduces the transaction cost. So to sum up, the missing piece is coaching and reflection, but there's more to this journey. And actually, if you're interested in what we do and the way we talk about leadership and leadership development, we do have a treat for you, which is our podcast. So, Arif, why should people listen to our podcast?
Well, because we're always looking for inspiration from the world around us. There's lots of things going on, lots of ideas in the world, lots of events in the world, news, the current affair, whatever it is. We're always open to looking outside and using that inspiration to inform our views and thoughts on agile leadership and how leaders can embed agility into their leadership practice. So, head over to our podcast, download it. We're season 1 still going strong. Plenty of topics in there that I'm sure will take your fancy. Subscribe, download the latest episode, and we can't wait to have you listening in.
Yes, and as always, it's not only theoretical. We reflect a lot about our experiences, about experiences of our clients. So, as you can see with us, we're all about what's happening in the world and how every event that happens, this week is going to be an interesting one, which we won't tell you about, but there's been some interesting events that impacts leadership and how leadership can shape it. With that, we're very happy to host you as always, and we were very happy to have you for this leadership development webinar. We will schedule the next one soon. Look for it in our Humble Associates LinkedIn profile. Follow us, follow our podcast, or subscribe to our podcast if you'd like. And with that, we would like to thank you for your wonderful presence, attention, and your comments. It's great to have you here, and thank you so much. Have a great day, and hopefully see you soon.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.